Avalon Hill's Waterloo attempts to recreate the events of June 1815 with the iconic figures of Napoleon and Wellington battling it out. This is Retro Gaming Night here on Legendary Tactics. And we've had a chance to play this game a little bit now, and we want to give you our thoughts and just a quick little pocket review, if you will, of this classic game and why you might want to play it, even though it's almost 60 years old.
Oh, it's actually, it holds up very well.
Yes.
If you're a Hex and Counter fan, I think this is one you would enjoy for sure.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm not sure how many. Hex and Counter is kind of, it has that old school feel now. So I'm curious to know whether there are many gamers these days that are playing Hex and Counter. If there are, then awesome.
Yeah.
And I know there have been some titles like the No Retreat series, which has been doing that. And there are still games being produced in the Hex and Counter
kind of form
style. But there was a time when this was, this was it. This was the way to game.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is
unless you wanted to play checkers
or chess.
Or chess. Yes.
This format's a bit newer to me, to be honest.
Yes.
I know that. Yeah, I have dabbled in No Retreat with you, but really, this is the first kick at the can that I've really dived
now,
in.
What's interesting, and this kind of gives some interesting contrast to the review, because I remember you saying that Hex and Counter didn't really interest you all that much, and now that you've had a chance to dig in, and we're going to be digging into some other games later on in this series, but what are your thoughts? What do you like about it?
Well, it was the game, the walkthrough that we did earlier. The one thing I noticed was that at the beginning of the game, as the French, you just feel like you're going up against a tsunami, and there's no way. And then as we played into the game a little, so I just in my first game just charged head on, right? And like, okay, well, if I can hit a tsunami, so set the forces right into it. And then all of a sudden I was breaking through and making progress, and it was like, oh, okay. So like, I loved how the tide slowly shifted. That was a really cool kind of experience.
Yes.
In the Hex and Counter.
And it's all those little battles that in the Hex and Counter, you feel like you're that commander with the bird's eye view, and you're commanding your forces, and everything's about positioning and trying to make sure that you've set up properly, and you're building your line and
your
all
zone
that
of
stuff.
Control. That was a new concept to me, and that's
yes,
kind of interesting too, to sort of again with the positioning and making sure that you maximize all the characters in their spots where they're supposed to be in. So
yes. Now, component wise, I mean, compared to some of the amazing map boards and so forth that are being produced today.
Oh, you're not buying this for that, no.
No. It's a fairly basic kind of look, but I like it. It's very functional. It's not.
And actually, there's something kind of endearing to sort of go back into a retro game where it's like clearly from another era, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So I kind of that's kind of a neat. It's been really neat to do that. So
yeah. And, you're probably not going to hang this map board on your wall as art, but
who knows? Who
Yeah,
knows? Actually, it actually.
Yeah, you never
in some
know.
ways, it's kind of cool. I would I would consider it, but yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Now the rules. How did you find the rules overhead?
Oh, easy. Yeah, easy.
Yes.
I mean, there are a few little things, and we have that rules walkthrough that you did a great job explaining to me on how to really maneuver the game. But it's the complexity level. I would say it's. Well below a 5 out of 10 for sure.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
What would you say though? You're really our rules guy, Nate.
Well, basically, it's for me, it's a bit of a mixed bag because the rules are simple, but in my mind, and this is maybe the year because of the year it was released. It's a very early on in our hobby. I find that there's not enough rules. Like, for example, the headquarters units are there for historical interest. But in practical terms, they just kind of clutter the board up. There's there's no use. I'd love to say, so such and such a leader led this charge, but in actual fact, and you can see from your little setup here that you just put the leaders on the road and you'll just let them sit there the whole game.
They're not moving. Yeah, that's where
they just get
stay.
in the way.
Yeah, and that was once you told me that they're not really of any great importance. I thought, I'll just leave them sit there then.
Yeah, yeah, and there is no distinction between cavalry and infantry and artillery. As the games progressed, in design, they would have things like artillery can fire at range.
Now that being said,
cavalry.
though, that being said about your 06 guys there, they are useful for placeholders when you're having battles. I
Yes.
did actually find them useful for that.
Yes.
So you know what?
Absolutely.
When you're moving along and then you encounter a skirmish and you've got 2 stacks of 5 pieces each.
You just want to remember where everyone was,
and then of course you're splitting up into different battles in that battle. It is very helpful to have that placeholder. So.
Yes,
not the worst, but probably it could have been a better way to introduce that or work that into the game.
Yeah, probably not a historical use of the command HQs.
No, placeholders.
Mark the place of a giant stack that's trying to figure out how it's going to be dividing up the defense.
Right.
As far as a play balance, and I know we do have limited experience with this game. But overall, I know you felt that it was overwhelming when you were first
starting out as the French.
Starting out,
yeah, it just feels like there's no way you're gonna bust through that, especially because you kind of claimed the high ground early, and I'm coming to you.
Yes.
It just seems so overwhelming and such a daunting task to try and even get up that hill. I think at one point you had a 30-1, and I was like, "Oh boy, how am I so?" I need 60 to make it 2-1.
Yeah, I think with the doubling anyway, I had 30 defense strength. Yeah, because if you do attack a giant stack up that way, and you can divide it out and so forth, and do the various soak offs and so forth. But yeah, it's I felt and again, just as my limited experience as the PAA. It feels like the French just have this unbelievable, overwhelming force. And yes, there are reinforcements streaming in, but they all start at,
really
the road to Hal or the road to Brussels. Sometimes if you're lucky, you get the stack from Braine-le-Comte that is reasonably close to the action. It took a long time for those pieces, even with the road bonus. It took them a long time to get there. In game terms, it was like 6 hours, to walk, to actually get
to walk up a road,
battle.
To walk to a road. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Now, when the battle moves closer and you start to put pressure on that Mont Saint-Jean area, for example, absolutely the
reinforcements are quicker to get there.
The reinforcements will be right on you, right, which will be great.
Yeah.
But overall, I think the game is, from what I've read and so forth, is generally pretty balanced, although people do give maybe an edge to the French, but I don't know, I've read other opinions as well that the PAA actually has the edge. So but that's the best kind of game. I think that balance is sometimes sometimes you want it to be finely tuned so that everyone has an equal chance to win. Other times it's fun when you're the underdog and you pull out a victory. It's much more satisfying. So even if the French has the edge, even if the French have the edge, it's neat to try and win as a PA. And if you can pull it off, man, that's satisfying.
That's awesome. Yeah. So one thing I did observe with our last game, and even looking at the map now, I feel like they made the board a bit too big. I'm thinking there's a lot of hex squares that you would literally never use in multiple playovers.
Yes, that's very true.
And I don't know. I don't know if that's just a general flaw of a Hex and Counter or not, but it just seems like
no. I think when you play the No Retreat series, every single hex, for the most part, you're always going to have parts of the map that are not utilized because they weren't utilized historically. Why would, as a French player, why would you go over to Le Fontaine
right,
L'Evêque?
Or the far left corner, you're never ever gonna have a troop down there, right? Ever. Yeah.
And probably that was a consideration, but they had to fit in Waterloo and they had to fit in like Charleroi. I was still getting used to saying that, Charleroi, in the same map, right? Because that's where the French started, and so you probably just they didn't have a choice. They had to include the entire landscape.
Okay.
But yes, there's probably spaces on this board that have not been entered in 60 years because
play. Yes, because it's just
why?
It's so out of the way. It's so, I mean.
Yeah.
I'm even thinking of like, a bounce back 2 situation, like so maybe if you were 2 squares up, but there's still really very little reason to be
yeah
anywhere near that.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was the one, and the other thing I noticed was that was just from our game perhaps, but the battles basically centered were in the very center of the map.
Yes,
and that's where primarily where all the action happened, was in this little section right here.
Yes.
It'll be great to play a few more games to see if that holds true, or if we,
Well, I think it's just a matter of it's the first defensible position. We had, as a PAA player, you need to set up north of Ligny, which is this line here. So
okay,
you're just going to naturally start in the best defensible position. That's just, what's going to make the most sense. So, but because this forest gives you a nice natural barrier to slow down the French, at least, and with the hills there, as long as you can have an organized retreat back to Mont Saint Jean area, it's gradually taking as much with you as you can, getting as many French casualties as you possibly can on the way, then I think that's that's a winning strategy. But
right.
But yeah, this is a game that I think, and again, from what I've read, is that there's all this nuance to the terrain, and sometimes you'll discover great position. You'll play the game 20 times, and then you'll discover there's a really great defensible position that you just didn't think of. And so
right.
The map has all this kind of flow through
subtleties to it.
Yeah,
in some ways.
As far as the tabletop simulator module, which is probably the only way that people are going to experience the game,
you're not finding. I don't think you're going to find a lot of these copies kicking around. But.
Yeah, yes. What were your thoughts on the?
Really well. It's pretty smooth. There's a few little things I wish they would have done better on. For example, snapping your stacks together and keeping them stacked. That would be nice.
Yes. Yeah.
The other thing that it just gets my goat, and it's a little thing, but when you roll the dice, the die for some reason wants to stay on an angle, and I mean it does tell you in the very center of the screen what you rolled, but I mean when I see that, is it a 4, 5, or 6?
Yes, and so there's actually a spot. There's a spot on the screen. See, I just rolled a 6, but you'd have no way of knowing it except where it displays.
So I mean, and that's a little detail, because again, it does tell you in the middle of the screen, but it's just rule flat.
and it is odd too, because you're generally just rolling one die at a time. So, but it allows you to roll,
multiple
like
die.
all these, multiple die, which is fine. It's. I don't know why the module is designed.
Is it
way.
Potentially for expansions that came out?
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, it does include a variant for the combat results table, which is has a 10-sided die. So there's a little more, kind of nuance
variance
there.
Yeah.
The main difference being basically that if you look at the 2-to-1 on the combat results, if you roll a 10, it's half attacker eliminated. So
half your value.
Okay. Yes, you're not going to lose your whole force in the attack, as you will in the basic, with the basic combat results table.
Okay.
But other than that, which I kind of like, actually. It seems like it adds a little more reasonable, nuance
realistic.
To the, to the game. But overall, I mean, for what it is, this is a pretty basic Hex and Counter game. Obviously, it's more game than simulation in many ways.
Yes.
However, as an introduction to Hex and Counter, I think this is a pretty good starting point. Yes, I would agree.
Yeah. I agree.
As it has been for you, Cax.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this was a great way to be introduced to the genre.
Yeah, and especially as the games evolved and they became more intricate and complex and so forth. It's a lot easier when you're building on a foundation, as those players were at the time, right? Because just like other series of games like the Coin series, you look at Andean Abyss, it seems relatively basic compared to later ones like Fire in the Lake, or even some of the newer ones that have come out.
Gandhi and what have you.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance to those games, and that's obviously that's evolution. That's going to happen.
Yep.
But here we're actually experiencing that evolution ourselves and playing these old games and saying, oh wow, so this is what they added into this one, and so it's going to be interesting to see.
And you have actually made a comment about Waterloo and Hex and Counter in general, is that once you learn one, the rules transfer pretty nicely from game to game. Just like you mentioned with the Coin, there's a lot of cross-pollination between games.
Yes, and it is an evolution. So if you know Waterloo, you should be able to pick up Afrika Korps pretty easily. You should be able to pick up probably D-Day.
You're going to have a lot of the fundamentals, a lot of the sort of the mechanic down.
Yes, yeah, and it's just going to change the chrome, I guess you could say. It's going to change the there's going to add in rules to recreate the particular game, but in many ways it's almost like they're different scenarios of the same system,
right?
And so
right.
It does make it easy to learn, but not that this is a hard game to learn. I mean, there's 8 pages of rules, and a lot of just some of that is examples of play, and what is the little bit about the historical situation, and just kind of outside case studies. You get a sense of how different rules
and
work.
It does give you a beginner's blush of some of the key players in the Battle of Waterloo too, which is kind of neat. Time frames and what have you as well, and so there's some nice little historical pieces to this as well.
Yeah. So overall, what would you say?
Oh,
recommend?
I would give it a thumbs up. Yeah, I would definitely.
All right. Yeah, me too.
Play this one again. So.
Yeah, and it's really neat to have read about this game a lot. When I was a kid, when back when Avalon Hill was actually in business, and now have a chance to try this game out. This is one of the neat things that something like Tabletop Simulator
allows you to do.
And so we recommend that you give this
try.
game a spin. See what you think.
Yeah. And if any viewers out there have a game in mind that they'd love to see us take a look at, please comment below, let us know, and we'd definitely be interested in we're going to be looking at more Hex and Counter in the future as well. So let us know.
And while you're down there, please like and please subscribe. That helps out our channel a lot. And thanks so much for watching.
I'm Cax.
And I'm NATO.
And this is Legendary Tactics.